Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Mine Wars Forum, brought to you by the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum. I'm Taylor, Communications Director for the museum. If you didn't know, the museum is a people-powered grassroots institution that educates and preserves a people's history of the coal wars. That's a bloody effort to unionize the southern coal fields of West Virginia at the turn of the 20th century. Today on the pod, we are speaking about a woman who was born in the coal fields of southern West Virginia and sang these words: United we stand, divided we fall. For every dime they give us, a battle must be fought. So, working people, use your power, the key to liberty. Those, of course, are the opening words to Hazel Dickens' song, They'll Never Keep Us Down. That was released about a half a century after the Mine Wars, but it is still a part of a legacy of resilience that endures. To talk about Hazel, her work, and her legacy, we're joined by one of her family members, her nephew, Buddy Dickens. Thank you for joining us today, Buddy.
Yes, ma'am. Glad to be
So,
here.
for someone who's listening or watching and they don't know about Hazel Dickens, who was Hazel Dickens?
Well, Hazel herself, a lot of times when people would ask a question of her, something about her life, her answer would be, "What's the big deal?" But, she was born in Montcalm, 1925, like anybody from West Virginia. And there's a lot of people that are very great musicians in West Virginia that get overlooked. And a lot of them are really, really prominent. So that's like Mr. Ellison, the song "Some Kind of Wonderful." I used to listen to that when I was a kid, and we used to try to mimic that, uh, the Grand Funk Railroad version back when I was a rock and roller. So, but again, with Hazel and all of these people, to be able to come up out of the stuff that they come up out of in West Virginia and being dirt poor and barely being able to afford a bowl of beans, uh, my hat's off to them. Everybody else had to move away from there. It's like I told Jonah Cohn one time. I said, if my family would have been able to afford a living back then, and if my grandfather, he had a small trucking company that went bust during the Depression down there. That was Hazel's dad, Hillary. Uh, Instead of being a bastard child of West Virginia, I might actually be a resident, because a lot of us had to leave because we simply couldn't afford to eat. So,
Right.
or to sustain a roof over our head. And Hazel, as she come up, was very soft spoken. She was a shy person. She really didn't start coming out of her shell, I don't think, until her 20s. So I was
It was
pretty
around
much the same.
16, right, that she moved from Montcalm to Baltimore.
16, let's see. Well, I have documents. Uh, I won't tell what they are because I'm thinking about putting all this into a book. But those documents put her in Baltimore in the early days of 1951. Uh, so those same documents would carry back into the 40s. So Hazel being born in 25, the earliest I can probably date her to being here would be like around 20. But you got to understand that when I was born, Hazel was already 35 years old, and she was already starting to make her path in music. Um, Here, she worked with Continental Can and maybe even an American Can Company with her sister, Vel Dickens. I think Vel was born, I want to say 1917, 1918, somewhere in there. But, my grandfather, Hazel's dad, was born in 1888. He was up in his 90s. I always wondered why he was such a crotchety old man around us kids. But then, now I get to thinking, well, when I was born, he was probably 65, 66. He probably didn't want no screaming youngins running around the house. He done raised his.
There's this
So, but
picture of the Dickens family in the Apple Shop documentary on her, and a lot of the family members are holding instruments. Was music a big part of the family?
it was. And, that's why it's kind of important to me, even though I'm about as talented as a toad. That's what I told a friend last night. um, my father, he played the mandolin, guitar, and the banjo. He toyed with the fiddle a little bit. He was a banjo player for a local band down there in Tazewell, the Back Porch Pickers. Eric Weitzel led that band up, and his wife, Charlotte Weitzel. Uh, John, Robert, all the boys played music. I think maybe Hazel was probably um, the only one of the girls. And her and Daddy was really, really close. Uh, I didn't know because when I go to a book, I skip the dedications and all that, and I go right to it. So when I got into Hazel's book, I just blew by all of that, and I didn't know that it was dedicated to my dad until Bob Gardner had said something, and I'm like, "What?" So then I'm going all over the house looking for my book, and I'm like, "Son of a," well, I won't say that word, but the thing is, there's a lot in there, but there's a lot that isn't because it's kind of a condensed version of her life. So, she went through a lot of trouble and hardship coming up. And I'm surprised that she was as quiet and didn't raise as much as stink about things uh, in her own life. Um, you know, there's a song, Don't Put Her Down, You Help Put Her There. That I'm trying really hard to learn. Um, there's another one, You'll Get No More of Me. Uh, and a lot of people speculate to what those songs were about. And, a prominent musician once said from the stage uh, that she had a mean husband. And that couldn't be no further from the truth. Joe Cohen was her husband, and he was a really nice guy. Um, there was a uh, birthday party, Tom Gray's house. It was Tom Gray's birthday party. Joe Cohen was there, Hazel was there, Alice was there. I got a picture of Bill Monroe and Hazel and Russ Hooper together doing a song. And it's on my refrigerator in there. I got, somebody made it in a magnet and sent it to me. So, but there was a younger time in her life that there was a guy that was kind of mean and cruel to her and very controlling. And I think maybe not only the meanness and the controlling part, but I think the part where uh, he probably didn't want her in the music because it meant that she had a life of her own, had things to do, and probably was jealous of her time.
Right,
So, but
because she's known a lot for her labor songs, but she also had a lot of feminist messages in her music as well.
she was all about promoting women in music, and she was all about women's rights as far as the workplace. Uh, if we go back to like Continental Canon, when they were starting to get a union together there, um, it was told to me that they tried to schedule them to work overtime when they were going to have a union meeting and vote. And he was telling Hazel, well, he's pretty much putting it to her, those who didn't show up for work were going to be fired. And she flat out looked at him with a grin and says, I'll see you Monday morning. So, but Hazel, she didn't like the idea that uh, women weren't just included in everything as a human being. She didn't like the idea that something was a man's world only if it was something that a woman enjoyed. So, like in her book, and I've heard that story a couple different versions. My father and Mike was sitting in a room jamming, and she goes over and puts on an album, and she turns it up, and they're kind of ignoring it, and so she's kind of wondering, who's this Yankee feller coming coming around my family? What's he want with us? He just wanted to play music. He was, of course, the Sager family was all about music, and Mike he really took to what was going on in the South in that sound. But anyhow, uh, she turned it up a little more, and then she just looked over at him and said, "That's the way it's supposed to be done." And they both just looked at her with a grin, just as unconcerned, and said, "Yeah, that's how it's done." So and then later on, they become best friends. So that there's a lot of other things out there. It's like I just recently read, uh, and you got to love the fact that people love enough Hazel enough or think enough about her to write something to begin with. But um, if you're writing things and you don't really know, you really shouldn't write about it.
Mm.
You write about the pieces that pieces you don't, you shouldn't ad lib. Because I'm a firm believer. I'm the type person that if I read something that's totally preposterous, I won't read about it again. So you may be doing more damage towards somebody that you really appreciate than what you know. There's been things written that Hazel and her siblings had a band and they played festivals and this and that. It never happened. So her and my father may have played a few bars around here. Um, and maybe a couple other siblings, but that was far from being a festival. It was just a get together to play a little bit of music and enjoy it because the bar happened to be just up the street and they had enough room for us all to get together. So, but things like that. There's a lot of things that are written, and I just usually tell them you might refer to her book because some of this is not true.
Right.
Try to be as nice as I can about it. Um,
And just to keep
and
the through line here for people who might not be as familiar with Hazel's story, she's born in Montcalm. In her late teens or early 20s, she moves to Baltimore, and then she's working at factories, she's working restaurant jobs, and then she starts to get into the music scene because she's already kind of cut her teeth playing with the family, but they weren't playing out together as a family, but that's where she got her musical knowledge from. And um, she also had a love for the music for the place from the place that she was from, West Virginia.
absolutely, I mean, I can't count the number of times that she would stand and let people know about her heritage there and that someday she was going back. Uh, she told me that's where she was from and that's where she'd be buried. And I was in a point of disbelief when it was going on.
When she passed.
Yeah, because it happened all of a sudden and um, it was kind of kept quiet. Even she was in hospice uh, down in D.C. and dying. So, but all the way to West Virginia, I was a wreck. So, but after my daddy died, uh, as far as music went, if I had a question or something, it was Hazel. So, and she would take time to talk to me. The first band that she was in up here, my daddy was in it. He was mandolin player. Walt Hensley was a banjo player. Hazel was playing upright bass then, and Walt Hensley played with a guitar player that worked for I think Monarch Rubber up here. And finally, the guitar player told Walt, said, "I can't do this anymore." Said, "My wife ain't gonna have me playing in no band with no woman."
Mm.
And Walt went off on him and told him, said, "That woman ain't worried about you or me. She just wants to play music and do what she enjoys doing, the same as you or I." Uh, and I got to commend Walt for that. He passed away a few years back as well, but he was one of the ones that uh, actually. Um, I might be getting off topic here, but it's kind of a funny story. Uh, Hazel had played, around here pretty much with uh, Bob Baker in that band, but there was a guy that had borrowed her guitar to do a gig. And when he borrowed it, he had took, the old furniture tacks that would be on the front of a chair to hold the fabric together back in the 40s and 50s. He had took those and put them all the way around the rim of that guitar, just drove them into it. So today that guitar would probably be worth thousands of dollars. But not only did he do that, he took it down to the pawn shop and pawned it. So Hazel's wanting her guitar back. She don't know where it's at or where he's at. And Walt Hensley found the guy, bought the pawn ticket from him, went down and got her guitar back and gave it to her. So, but because the guy then was playing with Walt Hensley, and Walt didn't like the idea that he done that to her, but he didn't like the idea that somebody he was associated with had done that. So, but when Hazel came up here and the music started taking off for her, I guess when her and Alice had got together, she left the Baltimore area and went to DC. So
And something about Hazel that I've kind of gleaned from research and you talking about her is just like this spirit she had of justice, of right and wrong, whether it's, her music about the power of unions or uplifting the working class or feminism. Is that something you experienced with her, with your personal relationship with her?
Oh, as far as her standing for um, what's right or what's wrong concerning other people, she had that old mountain type justice. It was either just, there was no cut or dry. It was either wrong or it was right. And she didn't mind telling you about it. She didn't care. Well, I won't say that she didn't care. It would hurt her if she lost a friendship. Same as it does me. When someone you think you know about and have become very good friends with can cut you loose simply because of your beliefs, well, then they're not very much of a friend to. That's the way our family perceives it, and I think most mountain people do. But it would hurt her, but you would never see it. So, but it was either right or wrong, and if it was wrong, she didn't want no part of it. I'll go ahead and tell that story that I told you I wasn't going to tell.
Okay.
So,
Well, I love this story. I'm so glad you're going to tell it.
well, I won't tell. I just won't say where. I just will say it involved Pittston strike.
Right.
So that I had lived in this town where there was a tent. The union was there. Picket line was there. A very prominent place. It would probably be the number one spot to be with a picket line. So, and I worked in a restaurant. So it was a 24-hour restaurant. That might tell a little something. But anyhow, when the strike was going on, I would pack up the leftovers at breakfast when we would go and start serving lunch. And I would take it up to the tent and give it to them guys so they'd have something to eat. Because, these guys, they're not working. They're on the picket line. Who knows what they have to eat or drink. So, but anyhow, when I left the job and I would go home, I'd have to drive right by this picket line. So gathered some things up and went up there. And, the tent has this little split in it. So I'm parting that split and going in there with a little box full of stuff. And I look up and there's Hazel Dickens. And she's like, "What are you doing here, boy?" And I just looked her dead in the eye. I said, "I live here. What's your excuse?" So, but she just laughed, and then I had to go back to work. But the people I worked for didn't like it very much, and my boss told me I couldn't do it no more. And the picket line was set up, and of course there was no sales going on with the picket line in a coal mining town, and So picket line formed. That sales wasn't happening, so my boss wanted to know why, and then back into the kitchen area, and I was going. I was thinking, well, I might as well start looking for another job, and I said, yeah, what do you need? And he said, give me a hand here, and he was throwing stuff on a grill to cook for me to take down there. So, but went out the door with a few things, and one of them actually says, where are you going, buddy? I said, going down to feed you guys. And one of the guys says, come on, boys. They all just left and went on about their business, and that was that. So, but it surprised me to walk down there and go in a tent, and there's Hazel, and none of the family knew she was coming, but that's the way she was, just wherever she thought she needed to be to do the most and make a better impact, uh, or whatever she thought was right. She didn't really care how much money it cost her to go do it. She done it.
Yeah.
So, but
And that
I know
shows
of a
me some
lot of
shared family values too. You guys are both, supporting the striking miners in the Pittston strike, and you don't even know the other one's there.
right. It was a surprise. I think it was pretty much a surprise for her when I, walked into that little tent. So, but she was very special to me. I mean, sometimes we'd go at it, and then other times we were just like the best family members out of all the Dickens family you could ever hope for. When I was real young, my cousins had a Armstrong linoleum store in Baltimore, same area where that documentary is done that we're talking about. When the car's coming down the street and it's doing like a video pan of the block, and it's got all those stores and shops, and you can see like even back then they had a great big electronics amateur radio shop that you don't see stuff like that anymore. But in that row on down the road a little bit, my cousin had a linoleum store, and my grandparents, well, that took up several of what would be row houses, that store area, and then the top was made into like a big housing unit. That one of those little apartments on one of the ends was my grandfather and grandmother lived there. So back then people couldn't afford air conditioning and stuff either. I guess maybe some people could, but we couldn't because we're from West Virginia. My people's from West Virginia. So, but where a dollar's always taken but never spent. So, but we were sitting there, and I don't know if many people remember the time, but the corner drugstores and drugstores had what they called a soda fountain, which had like the upholstered Art Deco bar stools, and you get a milkshake or a soda or hot dog or hamburger in just that little spot. But somebody went down and got us all sodas and brought them back. Well, I done drank all mine and done got down to the last little bit of crushed ice. I love this stuff. And there's 3 or 4 of us sitting on the sofa, and I'm squeezed next to Aunt Hazel. And Hazel says, boy, I sure do like that crushed ice. I said, boy, I sure do too. And she's looking down at my cup getting emptier, and she's just taking her time. She's still got 3/4 of a cup left. And mine's all gone, and I'm sitting there. And she just looks at me with a big old grin. She starts chomping on some more ice. And I'm looking up at her like, yeah, you still got some left. And she just handed me a cup. She says, would you like to have this? So that's the kind of woman she was. Not just with
It's like a
family,
very
but with her.
strong but generous person.
Yeah, gentle hearted. So, but, she wrote the song Black Lung because of her brother Thurman, which I forget the name of the cemetery, but I think I finally got that cemetery tracked down. It's in Matoka. So, but it's most likely unmarked because I found his death certificate.
Hmm.
So, but also like many black lung uh, sufferers, on his death certificate, the cause is unknown.
Hmm.
So, and I do believe that is where a lot of people in the medical field, um, the company was in their pockets. So, but she had other family members like her older sister, Dovey uh, Bailey, which is Rochelle's grandmother. Um, I think her husband may have passed of illnesses due to mines, but Beulah, another one of her sisters, I think her husband's name was Grover Cardwell. He also died of black lung. And then, the other side of my family, we had my grandfather. He was an Asbury. I think I told you about that. The doctors kept saying that he didn't have black lung, but we were up here then. So we told him, you need to come up here, or my mother did, and says, you need to go to Hopkins. So he went to Hopkins, and the doctor says, I don't see how anybody could deny you benefits looking at your x-rays. So he finally got his black lung. But, people can't afford to do that. They can't afford to come here, stay in a motel room somewhere to be able to get those benefits back then. So, and that's the thing that kept Hazel driven was she had a big heart, and it would hurt her to see people suffer from this.
I think it's these types of injustices that inspired Hazel to make the music she did. And not only did she make the music, she wanted her music to, comfort and inspire people. Like we said, she was at Pittston. She was, of course, at the Harlan County strikes as well. Would you say that Hazel wanted people to act upon the messages that she had in her music?
I think she does, but I think she wanted them to do so in a positive light. I think she wanted them to reach and dig deep within their souls and their minds and come up with a reasonable solution. I think that she wanted West Virginians to wake up to the people that are coming into the state, selling snake oil, so to speak. They're going to do all these great things for West Virginia, but only to find out down the road that they're lining their own pockets. And then, a lot of people can come into something with the right intentions, and they can have all the good intentions that one could possibly have, and money does strange things. Money and greed. So it's like you can't always trust what comes into the state. So, and it's been said ever since the beginning of time that the money and a dollar bill is the root of all evil, and I think West Virginia's seen that over the decades. So now Hazel's brother, Guy Dickens, he had won a truck mine in a card game, and he couldn't get his brothers to help him mine it. So he turned around and sold it for nothing. So, but yeah, Hazel, that's where I was. I know I'm long-winded, but that's where I was going to go with the things that are happening today. Is she would be all over top of that and trying to write something to bring attention, or trying to make it known at a show or something that, hey, this is not over with. Things are still going on here that are not right. People are dying. People can't live. People are living in horrendous living conditions or homes. I remember when I was real young, I went down through a strip of West Virginia where all the mines were pretty much shut down. Nothing was happening. There was no other means of economic growth or companies or whatever. And I seen houses that had holes in them patched with cardboard that had been weathered and coming apart. And, cardboard ain't going to hold nothing. So, but it's the best that they could do to keep the weather out of their houses and stay alive. I'm 400, I'm a 6 or 7 hour ride to Princeton, depending on which way I go. If I'm this far away, just simply because my roots are there, I'm still a pretty good distance away. If I can know what's going on and the things that are happening to people, anybody can find this information if they want to go look at what's going on. And I hope maybe this podcast does spark some people to research it, find out what's going on, find out why Hazel and people like her were so passionate to try to bring forward the hurtful things that are going on down there. I mean, we're talking about people's families. We're talking about someone's life. You know, it's all good until it comes home. There is not a dollar amount on a human life that, there's not enough money in the world for me to put my life in harm's way. I don't care if I got a year left. So you need to think about that in context with other people's lives too. And that's the way Hazel was. Uh, when I don't know if I'm like her in that respect or not, but I do get passionate enough to where when you talk about some of these things as a human being, it actually hurts. When you stop and you realize actually what's going on. But I've seen her in that mode to where the things that were going on actually, I think she felt the physical hurt behind it, and I think maybe that's why she was able to come up with a few good songs about it.
Yeah, some people just feel so deeply, you know.
She was very quiet, but as far as how she was feeling, you could almost read her like a book by the look on her face. So
I want to talk about Appalachian identity for a second. You know, you and Hazel, although did not spend the majority of your lives in West Virginia or Appalachia, still feel that like pull of like your home place. What do you think that is?
Oh, the pull to West Virginia? My dad was country as country could be. So he was born right there in Montcalm too in 1935, 10 years away from Hazel. You know, Hazel used to tell everybody she was born June 1st, 1935. Well, my dad was born March 3rd, 1935. That would have been one heck of a feat for grandma to pull off. So that the pull is this. And I know that a lot of other people who are born elsewhere of West Virginians, and I don't think it's just West Virginia. I think this goes pretty much for everything down in that southwest corridor. We're labeled as hillbillies. It doesn't matter if we're born there or not. I'm going to use a word here. I have took, I don't know, man, how many ass whippings since grade school up to junior high when we left here because I didn't get it, but I guess I have a little bit of a Southern drawl because of being raised by people from there. And I was always called a dumb hillbilly up here. And like I said, it usually come down to blows. And then, people up here, or a lot of people back then, took it that everybody down there are racist. And, there was a lot of that going on. You weren't afforded the opportunity of them getting to know you first. You were automatically labeled. That's like Hazel had said, in that Hamden area, where Mimi Pickering had done her documentary. And I really liked that documentary because it picks the city up pretty well and what the background and the context is. But there were actually signs in the windows there because Hamden was in the Jones Falls corridor where all the factories were here. You had like lifelike toys that done like train sets and all of this. And then you had London Fog and all of those. But the N word was used on the signs. So, but in the signs it said no ends, dogs, or hillbillies allowed on places that were for rent. So, I mean, it's ridiculous that you're going to label a human being as being lesser grade, that you don't want them to be able to rent an apartment or a house.
Wow.
So, but and you're classed. So, but anyhow, also those two that are labeled unassigned are considered against one another because we're already labeled racist because we came out of the South, which couldn't be further from the truth. So, that being said, when I was 15 years old, my grandfather passed away. Like I told you, we were in Thompson Valley. We had to help take care of grandfather's dairy farm. Um, so, first day at school there, I was in a fight because I was labeled a Yankee. And what are you doing in our school? So, in that went on. So, in that context, where the hell do I belong? You know, that's my thing. Where the hell do I belong? But you know, most of our life, every summer, we were on the farm down there helping do farm work, pick up hay, whatever. Um, I can't count how many times I've been fishing on the Bluestone down there. So, but you know, it's come into question a couple times about my West Virginia heritage, and I take it very seriously. So, and at my age now, and considering that we're all adults, um, I think we should be beyond that. So, but you know, and I'll defend that to the day I die, I guess. Uh,
I
I
want
may be a
to.
bastard child of West Virginia, but I'm still drawing there. So they're in Tazewell County. But I don't know if that answered that question or not.
You did fabulous. I'm going to ask another question about um, Hazel, because this is one thing I hadn't been able to ask yet. Hazel was really deeply tied in with the UMWA's cause specifically. What do you think spoke to her so strongly about that organization?
I think it helped give her a voice also, uh, where to be, what to do, and how she could be more effective as well. And again, that's my speculation. So, because anybody that knew Hazel knew she was independent as could be. So, and that she was going to do Hazel no matter what. You know, she didn't care what people said. She didn't care who went to the wayside as a friend. She was going to do Hazel. So, and she was pretty headstrong. I think I got a lot of that going on probably. And sometimes I think that maybe it's a blessing in some ways. A lot of ways it's a curse. But I got to know Hazel more in my later years, especially.
When you were growing up, did you have a sense of her fame, or was she just kind of like
No,
your Aunt Hazel?
no, no. I seen Hazel Dickens as, you know, just a family member that would sit in the living room or dining room till 2 o'clock in the morning, keeping me up on a school night. So, but you know, they would all get together and play or whatever. And then she wound up going to DC, and that was a little less after she went to DC. Uh, you know, I started uh, noticing when other people uh, were doing these songs, and then somebody told me, said, "Your aunt wrote that song," and I'm like, "Nah, no way." So that's like Dolly Parton done a few old memories, and that's, I think that's the title for her album, stuff like that. But you know, there was a lot of other artists that done a lot of Hazel's songs that really had a lot to do with them coming into being, and most of them were women as well.
Mm.
So that were uh, relentless and not going to take no for an answer. Like, hey, I'm doing this thing called bluegrass, whether you like it or not. You know.
How does it feel to be one of the people that's kind of carrying Hazel's legacy?
Well, I don't know if I carry her legacy, or I don't know if I carry it that well. I hope I do. So it's like I've told a lot of people, I'm fine running along beside Hazel. We're running along behind her, but that's my place. You sit and you're scared that every time that somebody talks to you about Hazel, um, that you might do something that might be detrimental to her image or her name, because she has worked very hard. I don't think anybody can take that from her. Um, she's very caring about, especially minors' rights, uh, about their health. And she's very hurt every time she would hear somebody passing a black lung. And then I think seeing it firsthand in the family made it really rough. But, uh, I've had people communicate to me using her name, trying to, I feel, trying to mold me into what they would like my outcome to be in something. If that makes sense. And that's very hurtful, because me and Hazel are two different people. Just because I'm her nephew and I carry her name doesn't mean that, or the family name, doesn't mean that everything that comes out of my mouth is Hazel Dickens. So, I'm my own person. Uh, but, like at the Flyaway Home Fest,
That's
I'm
exactly
there
where I was
for them.
about to go. So you guys are now in your second year of Flyaway Home Fest, which last year celebrated Hazel's 100th birthday, and now it's just continuing on. I before last year, I really wasn't aware of Hazel Dickens, and I think that you're and Jonah and everybody else who works with the festival is kind of bringing her message and music to a new generation. How
That to
did
me
it
is
feel to see a bunch of women musicians who were inspired by Hazel and kind of playing in her honor?
in my own words, that's freaking awesome. So I think Hannah uh, was on stage, Heather Hannah. Um, and whatever she was doing wasn't a Hazel tune, but it was really awesome. But she had been, we had a graveside service for Hazel before the festival that morning, and Heather was there. Um, she shared some heartfelt things about how she felt about Hazel, and she had a tear in her eye, and she had kissed her hand and placed a kiss on Hazel's headstone, and I thought I was just going to lose it, which I eventually did. So, but my cousin Rochelle showed up with Hazel's guitar that I'd restrung up at Pittston. They had a thing up there for Hazel, and I got through one of her songs up there. But we were standing there at the grave, and I was doing "Won't You Come Sing for Me." I'll wear that out. I know I do, but I love the song, and I was starting to lose it. And I told Jacob, I said, "We're going to have to cut this short," and we did. But then right after her, I think it was Brittany McGuire. And I was trying to take a cell phone over and set it up to catch part of what was going on, and then us while we were up there. Because I'm 66 years old. When you get older, you start feeling like, well, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, and you're living on borrowed time. So, but especially when you got a lot of ailments. So, but hearing them people perform and the level of talent that they had, wow, that's all I can say is it was all that for me.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then see that was
last year's event was a one day occasion, and this year is a 3-day occasion. So I'm just gonna do a rundown of the information for people who might be interested in coming to
absolutely
participate. So first of all, the Flyaway Home Fest is a fundraiser for the Mercer County and McDowell County Black Lung Association chapters. It's a 3-day festival this year. The first day is at Gary Bulling's House of Art, where there will be a short documentary screening, a silent auction of coal mining related collectibles, as well as an acoustic performance from musician Olivia Ellen Lloyd. The second day will be the big day of music at Glenwood Recreation Park in Mercer County. That's just outside of Princeton. 8 different musician and bands, including the local Honeys, Woodbine, Buddy Dickens, and more will be playing, and that kicks off at 11:30 a.m. and goes to 8:45 p.m. And then the final day, May 31st, a gospel sing will be at the historic Pilgrim Baptist Church in Hazel's hometown of Montcalm, West Virginia. The Sandman will play, followed by a sermon and a prayer service by Hazel's niece, I assume your cousin, Sarah Dillon.
Absolutely. With that festival in mind, can I show you one other thing? So,
sure.
We have this thing here, so that it'll be.
Oh, so you've got the gun right now.
I bought the gun.
You are.
I'm the guy
Okay.
who took care of the
I didn't
engraving.
realize that. I've seen the pictures. For those of you who are listening in just podcast format, there is a rifle auction at Flyaway Home Fest that has some Hazel Dickens lyrics engraved into it that'll be auctioned off. And what are the lyrics on it?
If you can see that.
Can't shoot that Union out of me.
The other side is
Flyaway Home Fest.
Yeah, this is one of a kind right now, but I believe that it will be, because I think if there's a following year, we may do another one, but we'll have a different. But now this one is dated, if you look, it's dated June 1st, 2025. So now the significance in that is the very first festival, the inaugural festival, but June the 1st is also Hazel's 100th birthday. I didn't think she would want her name on a firearm, so but was kind of skeptical about doing that. So, but I figured if I'd done the inaugural festival, it would also have her birthday on it. So
yeah.
I'm snotting all over the place. Sometimes when we talk about some things, I get a little choked up about it.
That's okay. That's your loved one. And this is not the only date you're playing in West Virginia this year. You're also coming to play at the museum in Maywan on September 4th at 7:30 p.m.
Yes, ma'am. That's my plan. So people down there seem to make me feel very welcome, and I'm thankful for that. If I do get to keep Hazel Dickens' name alive for another day, another year, another 5, I'm thankful to have that opportunity, as long as it is in the proper light that it should be. I won't be performing there. I think we're going to have a jam, and Thomas has kind of got me scared because he's talking about all these hot pickers, and I just beat the crap out of my guitar and try to sing a little bit.
It'll be great.
But I'm going to have fun doing it. So, but I hope you're there.
Well, I really appreciate you talking with me today, buddy.
Well, I hope it's not the last time. So,
but as far as the podcast goes, I appreciate you coming on.
Oh yeah, I hope we're able to break bread, sit down, drink coffee, and maybe Jonah and some of the other folks. So, but if we're around you, we're in good company.
That's all right. Well, I'm going to sign us off now for the podcast. All right.
All right. I appreciate you.
All right. If this has inspired you, the listener, you can support the museum's work by becoming a member at wvminewars.org/join. This comes with some fabulous perks and your own membership card, link in the episode description. We're also WV Mind Wars on all social media, so keep up with us there and learn more about, well, really everything on our website, wvminewars.org. Also, if you're listening to this in podcast format but would like to see our gorgeous faces, you can watch the video over on the West Virginia Mind Wars Museum YouTube page. And please subscribe to us and rate and review the show so that we can further share these important stories. This has been Mind Wars Forum. We'll see you next time. Solidarity forever.